Welcome to the Athletic Approach, where we will guide you through the intricate maze of the mind in sports.
The Athletic Approach is brought to you by Culture in Sport, where we believe that culture is critical to long term success. I'm Kristen Banowski.
And I'm Manisha and this is the Athletic Approach, where we don't just play the game, we understand it.
We've been kind of talking the idea of improving some of my self talk because I'm sliding right now. And I was telling you that, well, I slide. Oftentimes, I can be hard on myself during the run. And also before I slide, I get this moment of like anxiety where I'm kind of thinking, like, I don't know, there's a moment right before I go where I'm kind of like, why am I doing this to myself? Because I get really nervous or like scared or something. And I know as soon as I'm going, I'm gonna enjoy it, but there's always that flicker of like, wow, this is scary. What am I doing here?
Yeah. No, I found it so fascinating, kind of what your thought processes are like as well, it's
Hmm.
literally those seconds before you're in and you're shooting off. But yeah, and off the basis of that, lots of things kind of sprung to my mind, and I know that you've had experiences of using different things. Um, and some of the things that that we then talked about were um using self-talk, um, meditation, or sort of mindfulness, that kind of thing, and
Hmm.
visualization. And yeah, and we've started with self-talk.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
You mentioned that there's kind of like two ways to go about self talk.
Yes, so you've got instructional self-talk. So that's quite um, focusing on what you need to do within your sport. So what are the actual actions that you need to do in order to perform what you're expected to perform?
Yeah.
So, and we talked about how you sort of running, um, hopping. We came up with a few. Was it? I can't quite remember. I think it was execute, stay, not panic,
Yeah,
something like
essentially,
that. Yeah.
like when you're going down in each corner, there's kind of a few things that you need to remember. And the important thing is
Mm,
like what remembering which steers you need to execute. And eventually it's kind of like it happens and it's like just muscle memory. But oftentimes what gets in my way, and I think it's pretty common with any slider, is like you come out of a corner badly and you hit a wall or you skid or something, and instead of thinking what you need to do in the next corner, you're cursing yourself in your head or you're calling yourself a mean name or something like that. And instead of thinking what you need to do in the next corner, you're in this like negative tailspin of like, oh, I screwed up here, instead
mm.
of how do I fix it.
Yeah, and kind of some of the things that you mentioned there is actually the second type of self-talk,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of more about automatic expression. So kind of what that means is um, kind of how you feel about what you've just done. So that can be positive, that can be negative, and it's more about your perception of how you feel like something has gone depending on the outcome. So usually if very simple kind of example, if you lose, the self-talk would be quite negative. If you
Mm-hmm.
win, self-talk can be quite positive and you're kind of buzzing and you're up for it. And obviously a lot that we spoke about was kind of the fear of crashing, and kind of having understanding your thoughts and bringing that back to the present moment, and kind of changing it. But we discuss it, it's so hard, and none of it is supposed to be easy. It is a skill, and it is something that that you practice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, how have you found it so far?
So I've tried like a few different things. The one thing, um, so a lot of times I've really tried to pay attention to especially how I'm feeling before the run, because I would say about like 10 minutes before I tend to get a little bit anxious, and I start to get those like negative thoughts of like, if you're feeling this anxious, is this really what you want to be doing and stuff like that? And I've tried to reframe them into like thinking, reminding myself that I get to do this, that there are a lot of people who aren't here sliding right now, that there are people who would love to have this opportunity. And I try and remind myself that I actually do have fun once I'm going. So, more or less, like all of that, I just say in my head, no, you get to do this. You don't have to do this. You can walk away right now.
Mm.
And I feel like that's actually helping a lot with those feelings of like turning it more into the anxious feelings into excitement versus like fear.
Yes, and picking up on that as well, a lot of the times people can make the mistake of labeling their emotions as the opposite. So instead of, so if you're feeling quite anxious, trying to incorporate self-talk to say, I am calm doesn't work because it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't match your physiological state. Um, so instead of, again, what you just said, changing it from feeling anxious to being excited, that still matches how you feel physically, but it's putting that different, like, cognitive label
Mm-hmm.
onto it, so then you can process better. You can kind of let those feelings of anxiety kind of manifest into what you're about to do next.
Yeah.
And that, yeah.
I think it also like, I also like, I know that I want to be there, but I give myself the option of like control of the situation. Like, you like you can walk away, you can leave right now if you want. You actually like no one's forcing you to be here. You want to be here, and sometimes I need to remind myself of that because sitting here right now, like I'm like, yeah, let's go slide. It's when I get to the top of the track and I get a little bit nervous about going or who might be watching, or I don't know if I'm nervous about doing or trying something. That's when it kind of creeps up.
And it's not a bad thing to be nervous at all. That's another thing that we talked about. It just shows
Mm-hmm.
that you care. It just shows that, like, when you flip it the other way and you're not nervous, then that's a bit of a concern, because why aren't you nervous? Because it's normal to be, and it's
Yeah.
absolutely fine to be. It's only an issue when it almost takes over your life beyond those 10 minutes that you're feeling anxious. Um, and you've mentioned that you're becoming a driver, so
Mm-hmm.
that's something new. And
Mm-hmm.
again, when you don't have a lot of experience in a certain role, that can bring up feelings of anxiety as well,
Yeah.
again, which is completely normal.
Yeah. Have you had that experience where you briefly mentioned how it can be a problem when it starts to take over your life, that performance anxiety or anxiety about your sport? Have you had that experience?
My experience with anxiety is a bit of a funny one. It's I'm trying to figure it out myself, but like, whenever, so I've always feel anxious before a performance.
That's normal.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I, so I'll go on stage, but it's afterwards I will have a panic attack.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't like, and this is what I've noticed about myself, is that I don't like being watched. So it's from, because if I'm on stage, I know that people are watching me. I'm very aware that I'm being watched, and that's what scares me. And even like in like dance classes where a lot of the times what will happen is that you'll learn a routine, and the choreographer will split you into smaller groups. Um, and when I'm in those smaller groups, again, I'm like, my anxiety is up here because I know I'm being watched. And I even think about this like in the past, in like other like scenarios where at school, when like I'm just writing and then I can feel the teacher looking over my shoulder. I hated that. I hated that. Like, it was that feeling of, yeah, being watched. And then even like with learning how to drive, um, it was that pressure of that I know that I'm being assessed. I know
Yeah.
that I'm being watched and I'm
I
being judged.
I can empathize with that a ton. Like, this season, I was really excited to go. We were told in November that we didn't have any funding for the people who were trying to drive. So if you wanted to drive, you had to figure out yourself how to get ice time. And it ended up being that I ended up going to a few tracks by myself without any of my teammates. And which is really sad because I really do love my teammates. But at the same time, I was really excited about it. Is it frozen? Oh my gosh. Did I just freeze there?
Yes, you did. Yeah,
Okay,
you're
cool.
back
It's
now.
okay, cool. Um, yeah, so I was actually pretty excited to go and drive without having to compare myself to other people and not worry about what other people are doing, what their downtimes were, if they were doing good and I was struggling, or vice versa. Like, it was kind of nice to go without any real critique for a little bit or
Yes, yeah.
comparison.
Yes, exactly. Because lately I've been having a hard time getting back to dance classes just in general. So the last thing I did really within dance is compete with the university team, and that literally was about a year ago today. So I've not really gone to a class or anything, but I've been teaching. But it's that pressure. So it's the environment that you're in, because the classes that I usually take, every other dancer in there is wanting to make dance a career, but I'm not. I'm there for fun, to be challenged, um, to just learn.
Hmm.
But because everyone else in that environment is so intense in what they want to achieve, it's it makes me feel anxious because I'm not pushing myself to have a career in dance. So finding classes that have a different culture is so
Hmm.
difficult. I mean, I think it's hard for me kind of just in terms of like the area that I'm in. So I'm looking for different classes just so that I can enjoy it and not, again, like what you were saying, like not have that pressure and just have fun.
I feel like I think that's super interesting because to me it sounds like you have a really healthy perspective of dance. You just want to enjoy it, you want to have fun. But then when you're around people who have a different kind of like competitive mindset, it makes you really anxious. And like
Yeah,
it's almost like I don't know, do you think it's because you don't feel like you fit in with them, or you're not like taking it as seriously, or I don't know.
I think that's what it is. It's like I'm not taking it as seriously, and like the classes are for people that want to make it a career. So
Hmm.
naturally it has that intensity within it. But
Yeah.
if it's just for fun, then you can tell when it's just for fun. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like the difference. I think it all comes down to the choreographer, but it also, it, it also depends on where the class is, because if it's like, because usually a lot of the open classes that happen are at a dance college or a dance university, um, but because of that, it naturally attracts full-time dance students who are making it a career. So it's
Hmm.
like, oh, it's just difficult. But then some teachers will understand that other people are there just for fun, and sometimes those classes are literally so fun. And I've had experience of that, but a lot of them are in Liverpool. Um, but it feels like some of the less pressured classes are beginner classes, and I don't want to take a beginner class. I still want to take an intermediate or an advanced hip hop class,
Yeah.
but that's where like all the top dancers are. That's where everyone's trying to get noticed. Everyone's trying to, um, get a class video or whatever else it is. And it's just like, it's just a different world. But I think for me, I have to go in thinking I'm not pursuing this as a career. So it doesn't matter if I don't pick up the moves. It doesn't matter
Hmm.
if I don't look as good as the dancer next to me. I'm not in full-time training. I'm not aiming to be on tour with Beyonce. I'm not like that. Isn't my goal. And that's something that I've tried to kind of
Are
change in
you
my head.
are you worried what they're thinking of you?
A
Like the other
hundred
girls in
percent.
class?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Because I'm worried that I come across as a bad dancer, but I'm not a bad dancer. I'm just not as trained as them.
right.
That's that's how I think of dance. So there's no such thing as a bad dancer. It's all about how much training each dancer has. So if I'm comparing myself to a dancer who's in full-time training, I'm not going to be as good as that dancer because we've
For
got different
sure.
levels of training. So it was trying to understand that for myself, and that took me a while to realize that I'm not bad. I just don't have as much training as the next person, and
Hmm.
I worry that other dancers think that I'm in full-time training and I look that bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, but they
Yeah, you
don't
almost
know
have
me.
to yeah, you almost have to flip it. You're like, "Hey, I look this good and I don't do it full time, you know?"
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly. And it's like, and I need to realize that, oh, I've gotten this far because
Hmm.
of me and how much I've done, but it's not like I'm wanting to make it a career either. So yeah, no, it's an interesting one, and I think sometimes what I've realized is that a lot of dancers are in their own heads anyway. So there's something called the
Yeah,
spotlight
they're
effect.
honestly, like I bet you most of them aren't even paying attention to you. They're so worried about themselves. Um, yeah,
Exactly.
I feel like that in conversations. Like sometimes I'm worried, like if I'm in a big group, that I'm not talking enough and everyone's gonna think I don't want to be there. And the reality is they probably are so worried about what they're saying that they don't even notice that I haven't talked for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Because like their way of like dealing with whatever they're going through is probably by talking. I know a lot of people that just prefer to talk when they're nervous, but then some people would rather take some space and just like process everything.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, completely. So yeah, so the spotlight effect, so that's exactly what it is. So where you think it's basically you think people are watching you when they're actually not. Like, and it's just trying to understand that you're not as special as people as you would think.
Yeah, I mean, you're the main character in your own story, and that can be good or bad because either you're constantly worrying about how you look or like and that's like negatively affecting you, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. Do you often find that in like in bobsleigh where there's moments of, where you feel like you're under the spotlight?
For sure. Yeah. There's a lot of like when we compete, we're the only ones in the track at that time. So it's kind of just focusing on what's in front of you. But if you think about it, like all all eyes are on you. There's no one else competing at that moment in time. It's you versus the track. And so there are like one of my things I was worried about when I started driving was I didn't want to join with my more experienced teammates because I was worried they'd be sitting at the top making fun of me. Because they could see my run
Right.
going, and I was worried that they were just gonna
Yeah.
like make fun of me behind my back, and I was really
Mm.
self-conscious of that. But having talked to a lot of my teammates and stuff, like at least to my face, they were all very supportive and kind, and like they've all been new too, so that was really nice.
Yeah. And another thing about that is that everyone starts somewhere,
Hmm.
and not everyone walks into a sport being the absolute best. It's that progression.
Hmm.
And I think that is such an important reminder to understand that it takes time and it's not a quick
Definitely
thing
not.
at all.
Yeah, and learning in bobsleigh is messy. You end up on your
Mm.
head, and when you crash, it's basically like someone shoved you in the spin cycle of a washing machine. You duck down into the sled and you're just an object inside of another round object just getting hit around the whole time, and it's really loud, and it's kind of
Yeah.
traumatizing, honestly. um
Yeah.
like it's just something that can easily happen, especially when you're learning, and it's something that you kind of get used to, but it's never fun.
No, no. I think I would literally, I don't even know because I don't even wear contacts. I don't know what I would do with wearing glasses. I'd probably like break.
Yeah, you'd have to wear like those rec specs.
Yeah. No, for real, for real. But yeah, no, and yeah, and kind of like everything that we talked about, it sort of brings it back to what your own thoughts are saying and that inner self-talk, and then, having that self-awareness to begin with is so important before um trying to make any changes or trying to um improve on anything that you want to improve on.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of The Athletic Approach. We hope you gain new insights into the mental dimensions of sport performance and are inspired to dive deeper into this fascinating field.
The Athletic Approach is produced by Manisha and Dr. Jeremy Piasecki at Culture and Sports.
If today's discussion sparked your curiosity and you want to learn more, head over to cultureandsports.com. We've got a wealth of resources, articles, and research to help you understand the mental game even better.
And don't forget, you can also connect with us on your favourite social media platforms. Whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, or YouTube, you can join our community for more insightful discussions, expert tips, and a behind the scenes look at the world of mental sports.
Remember, the mind is a powerful tool in any athlete's training. The more you understand it, the better your game. So keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing your limits.
Thank you for tuning in to The Athletic Approach, where we go beyond the physical and explore the psychological. Until next time, stay strong, stay focused, and embrace the mental game.